Mr. President, we'll shift focus now to Donald Trump, U.S. President.
Absolutely. But just before that, Maria, I'd like to just go back to your part of the world, your region, known as a very peaceful region, now looking at a bit of trouble. Your backyard is being threatened. Your country has been threatened by Trump administration, by President Trump himself. How do you see the action of America in Venezuela? You have interests there. Are you looking at going back with oil in Venezuela? How do you look at what has happened in your backyard?
Venezuela, Brazil's position is very clear. It was clear in our position when Russia invaded Ukraine, which we condemned, as in Gaza, and it is very clear now for Venezuela too. We cannot accept that a head of state of one country could invade another country and capture the president. This is unacceptable. There's no explanation for this, and it's not acceptable. Now, Maduro is arrested, and now let's see, to consolidate the democratic process in Venezuela, that this is the interest of what matters now, is to reestablish democracy in Venezuela. That's the most important thing. And I believe that if Maduro has to be tried, he has to be tried in his country, not a trial abroad. It's not acceptable. The interference of one nation over the nation of another nation. In the 60s, Latin America suffered many military coups d'etat. Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Brazil. All of them suffered military coups. And those that had influence was the American embassies of these countries in Latin America that had a lot of influence. There was no tradition of demilitarization. So Venezuela was a negative experience. And I hope that the issue in Venezuela could be solved by the people of Venezuela, and not by foreign interference of any other country. It has to be solved by the people of Venezuela.
Mr. President, how serious do you evaluate this threat? Who do you think could be next? Cuba, Colombia. Is this threat real?
Or Brazil, for that matter, because he's threatened you too.
Brazil. We do not want a confrontation with the U.S., neither with Uruguay. That's the smallest country in South America. And even with the smallest island in the world, what we want is to establish a relationship in a very civilized way, respecting the sovereignty of each country, respecting the culture and the way of being of each country, and that we should have a negotiation where the two could win, could be a win-win game for both sides. And that's how I see President Trump. And that's how I see him. Brazil does not feel threatened. And so when Brazil received the tariffs, the imposed tariffs, we answered, and I wrote an article for the New York Times showing the mistake of those tariffs that were imposed on Brazil. And now I am scheduling a person-to-person conversation with President Trump so we can look eye to eye and settle the matters between Brazil and the U.S. Brazil is willing to negotiate with all the countries in the world. I want to treat the U.S. as I treat India, as I treat China, as I treat any country in the world. I have no preference. I want to negotiate the interests of my state, my country, respecting the interests of the other state or the other government. So in my conversation with Trump, I want to negotiate the issue of fight organized crime and drug trafficking. That's what I want to discuss with him. That's one thing. And I'm going to take a proposal to President Trump on this issue. I also want to negotiate with him the critical minerals and rare earth issue. Brazil has a lot of critical minerals and rare earth, but we don't want to transfer Brazilian territory in a sanctuary of humanity. I want to prefer to negotiate in a sovereign way that the transformation process of these critical minerals should be processed and exported in our country, inside our country, and not outside our country. And we'll sell it to whoever we wish to sell. We do not accept to be imposed in position. These things can only be solved in around a negotiation table. And it's not by the bureaucracy that will solve this. There has to be two heads of state have to sit closely, look to the eye, each one looking eye to eye, person to person, and say whatever they think. This is what's going to happen between me and Trump. We're free to say, I respect everybody, and I enjoy to be respected too.
That's a very strong message, not just to President Trump, to the world, but to your people as well, that you want critical minerals to be produced and to finally be manufactured into a final product within Brazil. Having said that, let's then talk about President Trump and your relationship with him. From I have no relationship with Trump to a meeting to now you're headed to the United States of America probably next month. How do you define your relationship with Trump? How do you define President Trump?
Well, I would like to say something that is very serious. I got along very well with President Bush. I got along very well with President Obama. I got along very well with President Biden. And now I want to get along also very well with President Trump. The relationship between Brazil and the U.S. has more than 200 years of existence, diplomatic relations. And I want to continue to be a strong relationship. That's what I want. With the freedom that the U.S. wants for them and the freedom that I wish for Brazil. Brazil has a trade with the U.S. of $80 billion. $40 billion that Brazil exports and $40 billion that we import from the U.S. And there's a surplus in the trade for the U.S. The U.S. represents only 12% of the Brazilian trade balance. Of these 12%, 22% receive the tariffs from Trump. It's not the end of the world. And we did not apply the reciprocity law because we believe in the capacity to negotiate from the Brazilian side. I have my chancellor with me, I have my finance minister, and I have the vice president of the republic that are negotiating with the U.S. Trump administration. And I proposed to him a meeting, person to person in March. Let's see what will be the date so that we can put things on the table, the issues on the table, and reach the agreement that we have to make. At any level, there's nothing forbidden issue to discuss with President Trump on trade matters. What I cannot put in discussion is my sovereignty and the democracy in Brazil. This is something that belongs to me and my people. But from the trade viewpoint, I'm willing to negotiate with the U.S. as I'm going to negotiate tomorrow with Prime Minister Modi. I came here to discuss with Prime Minister Modi what is good for Brazil and for India in our relation. What can Brazil buy from India and sell to India? What our business sector can build partnerships? Because this is what's important for the people. What will the people gain with all this, with these things? It's not just coming from the U.S. It cannot only the U.S. win to be the winner only alone. What we want, and that's why we advocate multilateralism.
Mr. President, one sense is certainly that there is some kind of weaponization of tariffs by the U.S. president. You said that you had great equations with former President Bush. Is it difficult to negotiate with Donald Trump?
I haven't started a negotiation with him yet. We had 2 phone calls, conversations, and we have a person-to-person conversation in Malaysia. Now, I want to go to the U.S. because since he started in Venezuela saying that he wanted to fight organized crime, drug trafficking very well. I also want to fight it. And I said it to him, a relationship of Brazilians that were smuggling gasoline to Brazil. And this citizen, this criminal, lives in Miami. And I even took a photograph of the house of this criminal that lives in Miami. If we're going to fight drug trafficking, send it back to Brazil, these criminals, Brazilian criminals that are living in the States, back to Brazil, so that they can be put on trial in Brazil. We have a federal police that is very specialized. We have a internal tax revenue service that is very well prepared. And we want to sit down with the DOJ, with the revenue authority, tax and revenue authorities in the U.S., and let's fight drug trafficking. Yes, let's do it together. And so this proposal, I want to take it in writing form to President Trump, because I'm afraid that the wind can blow the words. So I'm going to take it in writing. Everything that I'm going to talk with President Trump, I'll take it in writing. I'm optimistic with this conversation with President Trump.
President, sir, the fact that when we interviewed President Putin, he said that President Trump is very different when he's in his private space and talking to a leader, and very different when he's talking to the world. What's your experience?
Well, I had already the opportunity to watch. Trump is an expert in marketing. He is an expert of the digital and social media. It's very clear that he does this like a TV show, and in the personal meeting, he's much more calmer and shows great tranquility. So I want to benefit from this personal moment, this person-to-person, the tranquility that two heads of state should have when they're together. I'm 80 years old, and he's going to be 80 now next June. So two men of 80 years of age do not need to fight. We don't have to put up a showcase. We have to deal seriously that the age that we have imposes on us, and to reach an agreement that could be a show as a role model to the world. We are the two largest democracies of that part of the world. And so we have to give an example at all levels. The only thing that I know is that I don't want war. My theory is the theory of Mahatma Gandhi, that managed to win and achieve independence of this giant called India through the example, showing an example, motivating the people that India would have to be free. This is the example, the role model of my life is Gandhi. This is the example of things that have to happen. Brazil has no vocation to go to war. We have already many domestic issues. When I took office in 2003, President Bush invited me to participate in the war on Iraq. And I told President Bush that I never met Saddam Hussein. Iraq was located 14,000 kilometers away from Brazil, and that my war was against hunger. We had 54 million Brazilians in hunger in Brazil. We ended with the hunger in Brazil. I stayed 15 years out of power. When I came back now, we had again 34 million people in hunger in Brazil. Again, in 2.5 years of my third term now, we ended with the hunger again in Brazil. This is my war that I want to wage against inequality. Inequality of race, of economic inequality, gender inequality. And now another fight I picked up now. Another fight that I'm going to pick up. That is to fight against murders of women, female murders, and violence against women. I'm going to fight against that. And I've been saying that the priest has to start at Mass talking about that there should be no violence against women. The pastor in his church has to start the service talking about against violence. The trade union leader will go to the plant gate, demand more wages. He also has to talk about the violence against women, because we, the men, are the ones that practice violence against women. And the women were not be made to be beaten by men and not can be treated as an object. Women in the 21st century, they demand respect. They want equality. They want to participate in the political life of the country. And they're not inferior to vis-a-vis to anyone else. So this is my fight against inequality. Any kind of inequality.
Mr. President, we'll talk about your legacy in just a bit during the course of this interview. You have invoked Mahatma Gandhi. He's the father of our nation, and you've also said that there's need for mutual respect. Do you get this sense that, given the uncertain times that we are living in, a lot of announcements are coming on social media, Truth Social to be specific in case of President Trump?
Well, I believe that what we call social media is something that has not much social that we see in the digital networks. There's a negative side on the digital networks that are people with bad faith, that not goodwill, that use that media, and the lies prevail, evil stuff prevail, and that's why we defend the regulation, the platforms. And the platform, when they publicize something of violence against any person, it has to be punished and put on trial by regulatory framework. Otherwise, we won't manage to deal with the problem. We now in Brazil forbidden mobile phones in the schools for the kids. It was an extraordinary gain for education. The children now started to talk with each other. They started to play again at the school, play soccer again in the school, because it's meaningless for a classroom have children using mobile phones. Neither the teacher will manage to teach, neither the student will manage to learn. So we have this strong decision that was made in Brazil that we want that democracy should be exercised in the real world and also in the digital world. So that we advocate for regulating the social media.
So would you want perhaps President Trump to speak to leaders in person, and if the talks are ongoing, no announcement should be made on Truth Social?
Well, I believe that the behavior of two heads of state, I would never communicate an action on my side with India through Twitter. I would call Prime Minister Modi first. I would talk with Prime Minister Modi first before making any announcement or statement. That's the most civilized way for you to build harmony. It's the most civilized way. You can't be caught by surprise with unexpected news because someone made a decision against your country. What the correct is to set up a meeting and for you send your foreign affairs ministers to talk first, because the world is very nervous. And there's an absence of leadership in many parts of the world. We lack leaders. We see that we should guarantee the democratic process, and these institutions are being discredited because they don't guarantee it. The UN is being discredited. More than 20 years that Brazil created the G4. We defended that Brazil, India, Germany, and Japan should be permanent members of the UN Security Council. Never. No one made any move for other countries to participate. And so the UN now is weakened. And even the permanent members of the UN Security Council, Trump, Xi Jinping, Putin, Macron, and the UK, they don't talk between themselves, amongst themselves. There was no heads of state meeting to end with the war in Russia and Ukraine. You discuss at the ambassador level at the Security Council. And so it would be necessary that the UN should be strengthened again so that the UN could coordinate any kind of conflict existing around the world.